So the bouquet, I had to stop turning up to catch the bouquet, not because it wasn't good for me, it wasn't good for the other people that I knocked out, probably is more the point. I am competitive and it's bad. I never joined those Christian sports competitions because, anyway. Well, yes, I'm going to share a bit of my story, a bit of what we've been doing in Toowoomba, and a bit of men and women working together. The great thing is we have been running City Women in Toowoomba for 21 years, and I've been up in Townsville Mackay this weekend because City Women has started here, and it was great yesterday to meet with a bunch of women who are now, in the last year, started moving into the schools and running a program called Bella Girl. There's a team of women that are going to your strip club to connect with the strippers in there and show them the love of Jesus. And then currently there's another team of women and men working together on a pregnancy support centre. So that's exciting stuff as the church begins to look outside the walls and find the needs of the community, hey. So if you hear about City Women, get involved. There's big needs in all of our cities. But when God in Genesis, when God decided to launch the biggest mission on earth, who did he choose? We know he created Adam as part of his mission, but he didn't just create then another man to be Adam's partner, or he didn't create a committee of men or 9 elders to work with him on the mission of planet Earth. He created Eve. He created Adam and Eve together, and he commissioned them together to be fruitful on planet Earth, to multiply, to take dominion, to walk in authority. It was a male and female team together that he created. So cool, isn't it? They were being launched into a battle, and it was clear that Adam could not fight alone. The loud message that we get from Genesis is that God has intended for men and women to work together. This is just not about marriage, it's all of life. Whether it's in family, in our workplaces, in our church, in our communities. And in Genesis 2:18, God said he would create a suitable helper for Adam. And this is not a helper in the sense of someone to make his coffee, find his slippers, iron his shirts. That Hebrew word for helper is actually a word called Ezer, E-Z-E-R. And it's a military term. It means warrior. So women, you are warriors. You are warriors created to work alongside, not as somebody weaker or inferior. There's no inferiority language at all in Genesis as God creates men and women. It's equal, it's together, they're partners. And this word Ezer is used 16 times in the Old Testament to refer to God as Israel's helper. That's how powerful that word is. And when you understand that as women, you realise we have a really important role here on planet Earth. As long as men. And unfortunately, what the enemy's done for the last several centuries of all of eternity has created a great divide between men and women, hasn't he? Where we argue and fight, and, we've got feminism, and even in the church, that we can't work together or that women aren't equal. But there's nothing weak or second class about women's roles. And you see again this, I've been writing a bunch of books called Disruptive Women because I've been studying the women of the Bible. And you've got women who see the enemy coming into their city and they pick up stones and throw it at his head. You've got Shira, who built 3 cities. A woman to build a city in a patriarchal society, amazing. You've just got everywhere you turn in the Bible, women, along with men, are active, bringing forth God's kingdom, pushing back darkness, declaring his greatness. And there is certainly nothing second class or weak about a single woman. And unfortunately, because I've grown up in the church, and as Jai said, I'm single and I get to talk to a lot of singles, and probably more so the women than the guys, but quite often a church can be the hardest place to be single in. And part of that's because the church values marriage, which is really important, where the world so much is not valuing it or even bothering to get married these days, but it can be really tough. And I actually preached on this in my church 2 weeks ago, and I did a Facebook post before I preached, just asking the question, what people think. Do you think the church values singleness? And 98 comments later, and most of it was negative. And one woman wrote this to me, actually. She was talking about the church, that's you and I, not just leaders. She said, we can be guilty of treating singleness not as a legitimate, complete and satisfying state of a being, but as a disease to be cured. or a waiting room of the unchosen ones, living in a holding pattern. You know, I've heard young single women just saying, I'm waiting till I find that one to, you know, really know what I'm meant to do in life. I mean, if that was my attitude at 46, I'd still be sitting around scratching my head. And so we don't just sit and wait. And most of you do end up getting married, not me. And that's great, that's important. We need to go forth and multiply. And so as a single woman, there is other ways to be fruitful in our life. And so what I've been doing for the last 20 years, myself and just hundreds and hundreds of women in my city, rather than sitting around waiting to start my life till I find that one special guy, I've been busy pioneering a whole range of different ministries in our city. We've run girls' camps in Toowoomba called Girls Getaway. I think we've run 64 camps, taken away thousands of girls in our community on a weekend camp, teaching them about the love of Jesus Christ. We've pioneered a program that has gone into most of our schools across Toowoomba. I've started a girls' home, been involved in starting a girls' home, which was a lot of work. We've helped pioneer a pregnancy support centre as well in our city. And so just a whole range of things. But something I've really started with my mayor is a whole campaign around the city free from pornography, because we realised that pornography was fueling just so much of the domestic violence, so much of the rape, the incest, the abuse that we were dealing with in young girls. And so I'm thankful for the partnership with my mayor. He's a great older man. His wife has actually died, but he's really passionate about doing something around this issue. And so we've been able to impact our city and see that go widespread across our city. And so, you know, what you can do together as men and women. We have a lot of men on our committees. We've got businessmen that back us. But it's just really cool when you go, you know, actually God's called us to work together, not to fight, not to compete, not to argue. I love the differences that God has created us with. And as you do that, people ask me, do you get lonely? And yes, I do get lonely, but you know what? I know married couples who get lonely too. Everyone does. But the richness of the relationships that are built as you're on mission together is just beautiful. And even though we're from all different churches, we don't sit around and argue about our theology or whatever. It's if you believe that Jesus died and rose again, then we're on the same team, whether you're male or female. And so the richness of friendships that you build together when you're in the trenches is really just beautiful. I haven't always felt that way, a bit of my journey. So I think you grow up in life, don't you, girls? You grow up in life thinking you're going to get married and you talk with your friends. I remember at, 16 and 17 in school thinking you plan out your life. I'm going to get married at 22, have kids at 25. You work out the Mariah Carey song you're going to walk down the aisle to, because that shows you how old I am. And so you have all these plans in your life. And I went away to Bible college in America when I was 22, and people said, oh, you're going to meet an American man, you'll get married. And sometimes our comments aren't always helpful, because I didn't. And you think, everyone thought I did, everyone thought I would. And you come back to Australia and you're still single. I love the comment when you turn up to weddings and people say, you're next. And I want to say to the old people at a funeral, you're next. But I might get in trouble. I remember, because I speak a lot around Australia, and this one woman asked me if I had kids, and I said, no, I'm single actually. And she said, oh my gosh, I'm sorry. I was like, so sorry for what? For what? What are you sorry for? And I think just some of those comments that we don't mean to be bad or whatever, they can impact, can't they? But so, look, I went through life just happy being single, and really I came back from Bible college and just threw myself into pioneering a lot of those ministries, partnering with good men in our city, good women. And then I got to about 40, and then I kind of had this year where everyone in my life had images or prayers or prophetic words about me getting married. Everyone, people would come from overseas, the guest speaker would come, and that would be his message over me. Just everyone. And so I thought, okay, well, maybe I'm going to get married. Maybe this is the year. And there was actually a guy on one of our committees that we were working in in one of the City Women umbrellas. There was a guy who was young and single, he's in his 40s, and I thought, well, maybe it's him. And I actually kind of liked him that year. Got to the end of the year and he went off and married another woman. And I don't know about you, but do you ever feel there's times in life where God has spoken just so clearly and it doesn't turn out how you thought it would? And you kind of, like by the end of the year, I felt a bit annoyed at God. I felt like he'd played this cruel game on me because I was happy single and suddenly you get all these words and you're like, okay, maybe I'm to get married, you know, you like this guy and he doesn't like you, and then he marries this other girl. But I want to encourage those of you who are single. I really want to encourage you, whether you're still young, whether you find yourself divorced or widowed or widower, it's about surrender. Our fulfillment as human beings is in Jesus Christ, isn't it? It's got to be in Jesus. And I just had to get to the end of that year and just go, God, I surrender my life. I don't know what the future holds. It feels mean, feels like you played a cruel game, but we surrender to his purposes always. And I always say to myself, the grass is not greenest on the other side, it's greenest when you water it. So if I'm single and this is where God has me, even though you felt like he's given you words, I'm going to water it really hard. And I'm going to keep being obedient to his will, and I'm going to keep stepping out. And I'm going to keep finding, yes, other great men that I can partner with for his kingdom. It doesn't stop the call of God on your life. It doesn't at all. And so I want to encourage you. In fact, I love this saying here. I think it was one author wrote, wielded properly as a single person, you can be one of the greatest tools in the hand of God for his kingdom. You are fit to be a glorious sniper in the master's regiment. Whereas a married person is divided between spouse and the Lord, the content single person can wholeheartedly serve him. And so finding that contentedness, whether you're going to be single just for a few years or for 40 years, find your contentment in him. Continue to do kingdom work. Continue to build relationships in the mission. Continue to partner with other sexes is really important. And I love even, you know, with Naomi and Ruth, because these two women, again, they probably felt like God had played a cruel game on them. Their husbands had died. They were in the city of, where were they again? Moab. And their husbands had died. Naomi, Ruth and Orpah, all their husbands had died, and you would have felt a bit browned off, and they could have just sat there in their pity thinking and watching everyone else. But they got up, they walked to Bethlehem. And then I love the fact that Ruth then went and put herself, she took a risk. She stepped out into the field of Boaz and ended up partnering with him and marrying him. And so no matter where you're at in life, God still has more. Don't become one of these victim single people. There's nothing worse than self-pity. Yeah, maybe it's not where you want to be. Maybe you look at all your other friends. Maybe you feel sorry for yourself, but God has so much for you to accomplish. Don't waste this season of your life. It's a gift. It's a gift. Let me finish with this story of one of my heroes, Eva Booth. Her father, so she's the daughter of William and Catherine Booth, who started the Salvation Army. Her father actually asked her not to marry. My dad's never said that to me, but I wonder how I would have... I know it makes it cheaper for him not having to pay for a wedding. Although William Booth used the wedding of one of his sons to fundraise for the homeless. You had to actually pay to come to one of his sons' weddings, and they raised a huge amount of money. But let me tell you about Eva's life. I wrote a little blog, so I'll just read it out. She grew up in London as one of the 8 Booth children. She received no formal education, but spent her teen years among the poor in London, serving them. At the age of 15, she preached her first sermon. After her sister and brother-in-law who led the USA Salvation Army were tragically killed in a train crash, Eva relocated to the States to take on the leadership of the Salvation Army. Under her command, she started hospitals for an unwed mother's emergencies shelter, soup kitchens, homes for the elderly, and services for the unemployed. In her first year of living in New York, Eva became horrified at the knowledge that 70,000 children in New York were going to school without breakfast. Does that happen here in Mackay? Happens in Toowoomba, probably not 70,000. So she saw a need. This kick-started her into action, and by Christmas that year, the Salvos were providing breakfast for 30,000 children. Under her leadership, Eva convinced the USA government to allow Salvation Army women to serve overseas during World War I. Many of them cared for the wounded and established canteens. President Wilson ended up awarding Miss Booth the Distinguished Service Medal in 1919 for the Army's role in the war. Eva never married. As I said, her father had requested for her to stay single and give her undivided attention to the Salvation Army. However, Eva did adopt and raise 4 children. Amazing. In 1934, she was elected as the Army's International Commander-in-Chief, becoming the first male international general. The power of singleness, the power of a life fulfilled and content in Jesus, the power of just living your life surrendered to Him. And so I want to just keep encouraging church. I want to encourage the church, if you're married, champion on the single people. Don't just be talking about them when they're going to get married. I love the word accountability. Quite often we use accountability to keep hold people accountable for their sins. But accountability should actually be giving account for the ability which God has given you. So we should be encouraging each other, whether we're married or single. How are you using the gift that God has given you? How are you being a missionary in your workplace? How are you seeing God's kingdom come in your street? That's what accountability is all about. So thank you, Jai, for having me this morning, and I trust that that encourages. Let me just pray for you. Father, I thank you. I thank you for the role of men and women across planet Earth. I thank you that you commissioned us. Thank you that you have created us to see your kingdom come wherever we are, in our cities, in our workplaces, in our schools. And so, Father, I pray that today that you would stir spirits again afresh to the call of God upon each person's life sitting here, whether it's even motherhood, whatever it is, Father, wherever you've placed us, you empower us. And so I pray that you would empower each person here to be fruitful for your kingdom, that we would see kingdom partnerships across the church, across the city, that would be fruitful, that we would see many come to know you in Jesus' name. Amen. God bless you.